Okay, thank you for being here and to present that excellent film on Amrita Sher-Gil. And how you started your career as a journalist. You wanted to be a writer or a journalist?
Well, Nanak, I trained to be a television journalist. I had no concept of going into the media either as a writer or as a journalist. If I had been left to myself, I would have finished my studies, which was in Delhi at Lady Shri Ram College, and then I would probably have gone on to Oxford and Cambridge and gone in for a career in the foreign service or something like that. And whilst I was in Delhi doing my BA, I did a couple of programs for the German television studio that had its main office in Delhi. And through this connection, they offered me a training, 2 years training in Germany, in Hamburg, for television and for radio. And so I did that and then decided I quite liked it. And so I stayed then, I came to it by default. I then developed a career in television journalism and started then doing documentary films. It was mainly political. It had very little to do with the art because in my family, as you know, my brother, Diwan Sundaram, the legacy of Amrita's artistic talent, that mantle rested with great ease on his shoulders. I got something else from Amrita and from this family. I got from Amrita without ever knowing her, because I was born much after she had died, but she was ever present. And it was a kind of role modeling also, that fiercely independent, which was also instilled into me by my mother. And in a way it was like setting out on a course, on a trajectory, which had similarities with her development, being sort of half Indian and half Hungarian. So what I liked about her was that she could navigate both worlds, the East and the West, with this tremendous ease and be at home in both places. So the question of confining oneself to one particular place and is also fraught with certain, but I like the idea of doing both worlds and then setting out on a career away from India. Anyhow, this is a very long thing because I was interested in politics, I was interested in development politics. I came from literature, so this was part of the background that I had, luckily, was infused into me, you know, with the mother's milk kind of thing. Yeah. So you had the humanities, you had the fine art, the work was, art was surrounding me, literature was there. But what I did my career on was on something completely different. And then it was only very much later, after, it's one of those things, you go there for 2 years to study, and then you suddenly wake up and say, oh my God, what happened? It's 40 years later. So you settle down somewhere else, and which I did in Germany, became my kind of home. Having said that, after all this was over, the engagement with Amrita, with the legacy, was being done by Diwan, who had sort of this ongoing, with Umrao Singh Sher-Gil's photographs, with the retakes that he was doing. So he was engaging in this, in the estate, in the aesthetics, in the, and I was slightly out of my ken on that, till the moment when a huge international exhibition, one of the few where Amrita Sher-Gil has gone out of the country, was organized by the German Haus der Kunst in Munich. And this was in 2006. And when this very flamboyant director of the Haus der Kunst, who is at the moment now the director of the Tate Modern, Chris Durkin, he was in Delhi, and we were discussing this program. And he turned around and says, and you, to me, will make the film, because you're a known journalist a television journalist in Germany. So I said, me, do a film on Amrita? So he said, yes, you do it. It's for the museum. And this is really how it came about. So this was when I started engaging.
I'll come to that later, a little bit about the film, how you conceptualized, or the director thought of making a film on Amrita. But your growing up years, I mean, where was Amrita? I mean, Amrita came to you through the pictures, through the archival material, or through your mother's stories, or the kind of environment that you've grown up with? What kind was that? I mean, what kind of growing up? I mean, I really want to know about your growing up years.
Okay. Well, Amrita, as I said, was very present in the house.
And we are very curious about this presence. How she was present? Only through photographs, through pictures? I mean, over the morning breakfast? I mean, how? I mean, over discussions?
Well, no, obviously not.
Recollections
not in that sense, but indirectly through my mother. Directly through the fact that we were fortunate to have 24 of her works in the house.
Yes.
Then also because my grandfather, Singh Sher-Gil, had this huge collection. They were all collectors. They were all collectors, and they were all archivists in
And how was your connection with Sher-Gil, your grandfather?
Well, my Nana, I remember him well. He died in 54. I was born in 45, and these were unfortunately the last years when he was sort of retreating more and more into his own world.
Yeah.
But I have this very strong image of him being there, and he would eat with us and children. And he would always be very angry at my mother because he was a strict vegetarian. And he kept saying, Satyanash, Satyanash, you're going to ruin these kids with giving them all this other food. So that, I remember this learned gentleman who I was slightly frightened of because he used to rave a bit, you know, when you were very young. And then he moved out of my life, and what was left was the presence, obviously. Now, as I mentioned, the direct influence of Amrita in that sense, it's indirect. It's indirect because it is a way of life, and it was absolutely self-evident that there would be no other way of life. I mean, as a person, as a character. Now, I happen to look like her. And and at a certain stage I was of course very proud of it, so I deliberately sort of role modeled myself in my, you know, the exterior, should we say. I used to wear my hair in the same way that she used to wear and all that. And that, okay, that passed, but then the similarity remained. And then I realized that this must be coming from somewhere. It's being fed, you know, my personality, the things that one was interested in. It was being fed indirectly, obviously, through my mother. So my mother's influence is just as big as Amrita's. It's just, and my mother was also a very talented
But you were never curious to unearth her letters, or to go back to her diaries, or you asked questions to your mother about her again and again? And never felt the urge to become a painter like her?
No, Nanak, because I think everybody knows what kind of talent there is there. Now, I was singularly untalented as far as as painting was concerned, and I knew that wasn't my métier. I was very good at languages. So I thought, when your initial question, that I would like to write, but it wasn't anything terribly serious. I loved literature, and I was quite fluent with English.
And what did you read that? I mean, your love for literature, mostly Western literature, or something to do?
Well, it was all in English, because my knowledge of Hindi is a little, I had a public school education, and the Hindi was bad, the vernacular languages were bad, which I find very, very unfortunate. But that's how it happened. So my English, my exposure to literature was always everything written in English, and then the translations, obviously. Now, of course, one doesn't stop. I left India when I was 18.
Oh, quite young.
So it's quite young, and since then I've set up my life outside, and you're constantly growing, and which is a good thing in one way, because you know, thinking on Amrita's life, if you see what has been encapsulated, as you know, she died at the age of 28.
Which is really, I mean,
it is.
I mean,
it's extraordinary.
She was only 28.
You see this.
I mean, she was only 28.
She was only 28.
Yeah.
So you have, within this period of 8 years, you have such, but I'm deliberately saying 8 years, because that's the time when she went to Paris to study at the École des Beaux-Arts and to complete her art education. So in the period between 29 to 41 and is actually what was left for her. And within this, it's like but then she was hugely talented. And I am not hugely talented. So, you know, there are differences but no, I was telling something else. We now take Amrita's development and what she says as, because it's frozen in this time warp, having died at the age of 28, it's what I call the James Dean effect.
Yeah, James Dean effect.
Eternally young, eternally.
Absolutely.
And she was very vivacious, she was very fluent, she was very articulate, and she had no qualms about and she was very precise and very decided in her mind as to what she thought of art, particularly of art, and she didn't. So it's like these pronouncements are being made, and very often people sort of say, but she was pretty sarcastic also, you know, in her, and brushing off a lot of things. But I think.
Was it snobbery? No.
I don't know, not snobbery at all.
Okay.
It was, she was not a snob, she was not a cynic, and she was not a snob.
Yeah.
If she was arrogant, as sometimes it has been said, I think it was the arrogance that comes from a definite knowledge of, she was arrogant about things about art, because she also says that you know, this, to know the best in Western art and the best in Eastern art. There is no such thing as Eastern or Western art somewhere. There is only good art and there's bad art.
Bad, absolutely. Yes.
And then she made, and there she was absolutely, and she was passionate about that. And she also said, the rest of it is not, you have to have very strong emotions, not be sentimental. So, I mean, she was absolutely decided on what was good and what was bad. And if you go along with it, she was normally right. She would have obviously, being the type of person that she was, she would never have, she kept growing. She kept growing, and you saw that also in her body of work.
Yeah.
So it's not a mind that sort of says, now I've developed this entire
I know how she
body of sort of theory or the body of work, and this is where I am, this is me. But it's constantly growing, it's constantly growing. And even within this short period of 8 years, she has 3 distinct styles.
Absolutely.
And
when
you're
she came
moving
back to
on.
India, it was just like as if she was making some correction according to her. She saw Goya, she was impressed by Goya, but when she came to India, she corrected Goya and she appropriated Goya according to her own, you know.
Gauguin, right.
Yeah.
Gauguin.
Oh, sorry. Why did I say Goya? Sorry.
No, it's
Gauguin.
also wonderful, but,
sorry for this. Yeah, Gauguin.
Yeah.
And then when she came to India, she corrected Gauguin according to her. This is how we, if you look at the great tradition of art history or the, say, at paintings, even the art historians, they look at things like this. So if you look at English paintings, they must have seen Dutch paintings, Dutch landscape painting, and they've corrected themselves and they've appropriated themselves. That's how the artists they do. So Amrita saw Gauguin. Amrita was impressed by Gauguin. So when she came to India, when she came back to the Indian, you know, atmosphere, she corrected herself. She appropriated. She
no,
was
not
like
corrected. I wouldn't use the word corrected, Nanak. I would say that she appropriated what she wanted for herself. And one is always influenced by other people. Nobody lives in this sort of pristine state and thinks that you know, you have discovered whatever it is. You are always part of a tradition. You are part of a continuity of fine arts, of philosophy, of literature.
Absolutely.
I mean, nobody comes and says, "I'm the first time I've written something."
No, that is a very...
I have discovered the world. No, so we all know that you're coming from somewhere and you're being influenced by other people. So and it's not so to amalgamate, make something creative, make something which is unique, is something that you, using all these different influences, you produce something that is your own. And that is where the talent lies. But when we do a critique of the moderns and the modernity in India, we kind of critique in this sense today when we stand today here, I mean, when we locate ourselves in our positions here, we critique the moderns as, they were kind of, you know, they believed in the binary division, that the notion of modernity that, you know, because modernity came as a baggage with the colonialists and as if they belong to a higher culture. And then I really don't want to discuss theory here, but and they created a binary that this is good, this is bad, that they belong to a higher culture. And even with the moderns, they look up to Europe, the patriarchy of their thoughts, even that lied in Europe. So the binary was there to an extent with the modernists, you know, and it was to an extent a sense of mimesis. To an extent, it was an exploration or a practice in cultural mimesis. But in Amrita's case, it is absolutely different. It was not mimicry, it was not mimesis, but what you just said, appropriation of a language and appropriation of a vocabulary that she explored and then she expressed. And I think it's also part of it because she personified both the East and the West in herself. I think this is also part of her Hungarian side of her, since she was born in Hungary and lived there till she was 8, which is when they returned. So these are the first formative years. The first language that she heard was Hungarian. The music that she heard was Hungarian music or European classical music. So all this is one side, and the second
for her.
And yeah, it's like you're layering. I mean, actually, I don't have to tell anybody in India, because we are the most culturally diverse people. And you have so many within India itself. You have so many people, you know, different with the Gujaratis.
Even if you look into a family,
it's a huge mixed
amalgamation of texts, of so many texts. You look at your grandfather, and so many amalgamation of so many texts of the best European scholarship, and also the Sanskrit texts, the Vedas and all that.
The Sanskrit and the Persian. And the so there is a huge diversity of culture and a huge diversity of languages within the framework of India itself. Now, so this colonial, as you pointed out, that colonial divide came as, you know, who's the higher, who's the better, who's the what. Now, all that has been thrown out of the thing. It's also interesting that Amrita, during that stage when she returned...
Thrown out in a sense, I would rather differ with you, because even Navina, even after 66 years of independence, we still inhabit in a cultural space where the equivalent of good education is the connotation of proper accent.
Oh, okay, that's unfortunate. That is unfortunate, but that basically, let's say theoretically, it is there. We are, now I've lost my train of thought.
Okay.
Ah!
Sorry.
Oh.
Okay. Now I'll come back a little bit later on the making of the film.
I'll tell you what it is. No, I'll tell you. While she was in, when she came back, this was like at the hub of, or the peaking of the period of the nationalist movement. So you were also getting into the national state thing. It's and nationalism sort of excludes per se a cosmopolitan thing, because you have to go, as M.A. says,